Hey, and welcome back to my channel. But really, welcome to this another highly productive video where we are going to solve together the real, huge IELTS reading test for the academic module. Wow, that's exciting. Let's see if we can figure out all of the right answers to those tough questions. Spoiler alert, we will. Remember, you can download, as always, from the link in the description, all of the questions and answers to this test and use them on your own if you want to. If you are a teacher, you can also use this lesson to show it to your students during class so that everyone knows how exactly to go through those IELTS tests. This is where I'm going to go directly to questions for each text, and then right here in the PDF I will insert the answers that we will figure out together to those questions. On my left side we will have the same file, the same document, but here I will open texts only and I will refer to the passages here and then put in the answers here. Now remember, I will not read the texts with you right now, once again, because this video will take ages otherwise. So I hope that you have downloaded this file from the description box below and you have already read the text. And I also hope that you have already answered all the questions, so that now you can sit with me and see how I explain every answer, and maybe you will change your mind about some answers and decide on others. So let's start off with the first passage that is called cork. So I hope you've already read it and you already know that this passage is all about a cork tree. That's a type of tree that is used in production of the cork caps for bottles. Now let's directly jump to the questions. The usual pattern is that I first skim the text very quickly, go through it, just to understand what the text is about, how many paragraphs it has, what is the structure, what are main topics for each paragraph, and that's it. Then I jump back to questions. I read questions carefully. I understand what the questions will be about and what the test wants from me. And then again, I go back to the text and read it very carefully and in detail so that I know all of the details of the text, all of the nitty-gritty stuff, so that it's easier for me to answer all the questions. Okay, so the first set of questions from 1 to 5 is the true, false, not given, my favorite ones. The ones that many people think are difficult, however, they're not. I will show you right now why. By the way, remember, this test is taken from the authentic IELTS Cambridge test book, number 12. It is a real test. It has the same difficulty level as the academic IELTS tests in real venues. So that's an authentic source. I have not taken it from obscure sources. It's very transparent. So you can expect the same difficulty on your own test. Right, so let's read the first statement. The cork oak has the thickest bark of any living tree. Now remember that answers are usually mentioned in the text in the same order as they are in the question box. So probably the answer to this question is in our paragraph 1, although it's not a rule, but it usually happens like that. So after we have read this paragraph, we clearly see that there is absolutely no indication about how thick the cork oak's bark is. We have here remarks about the quality of this material, how the ancient Egyptians used it, maybe Greeks and Romans as well, but nothing, absolutely nothing. And here, same thing, absolutely nothing about how thick is that bark. So for our first statement, we can safely put not given as an answer. I just type it right here. I will make it a bit bigger. Great. Now we go to the second section. Scientists have developed a synthetic cork with the same cellular structure as natural cork. Okay, that's probably in our second paragraph. Here, in this sentence, we see that developed most probably as a defense against forest fires, the bark of the cork oak has a particular cellular structure that technology has never succeeded in replicating. So the text clearly states that technology or scientists overall have never succeeded in replicating and making the same, in recreating the same cellular structure of the bark of an cork oak. So therefore, it's clearly evident that here the answer is false, because the text directly implies an opposite thing to the thing that is stated in the sentence number 2. Let's see that in the sentence number 3, it says that individual cork oak trees must be left for 25 years between the first and second harvest. So we skip this third paragraph because there is nothing about that, and we go to the fourth paragraph. Here we have a sentence: from the planting of a cork sapling to the first harvest takes 25 years, and a gap of approximately a decade must separate harvest from an individual tree. So when it comes to individual trees, that's a gap about a decade. Now, a decade is not equal to 25 years, and therefore, again, quite evident and quite simple that the statement number 3 is false as well. Next one. Cork bark should be stripped in dry atmospheric conditions. Right, it's here in the same paragraph. We already know that it's towards the end. And we have a sentence here. If the bark is stripped on a day when it's too cold or when the air is damp, the tree will be damaged. So note here the synonyms. When the air is damp, meaning wet, the tree will be damaged. So it should not be stripped when the air is damp or when it's too cold. Therefore, it should be stripped when it's warm and dry. Here we have exactly this. Atmospheric conditions is just a paraphrase of the weather. So the dry weather, it's exactly the weather when the cork bark should be stripped. Therefore, this is true. Great. Next one. The only way to remove the bark from cork oak trees is by hand. Right, let's go to the next paragraph. This paragraph is all about the techniques of how to strip that bark and how to process it afterwards. So it says that no mechanical means of stripping cork bark has been invented. So the job is done by teams of highly skilled workers by hand, because there is no machine that can do it. No mechanical means, therefore everything is done by hand. So again, quite clearly, it is true. You see, it was quite easy and it was fast. Now, why it was fast? Because I assume that you have already read the text. So we work with the text that was understood, and ideally, when you have read questions and went back to the text, you probably maybe highlighted or underlined parts where there might be answers to those questions. So it's easier to work with such texts. Of course, if you see the text for the first time in your life, you haven't even read it, working with questions is difficult. So I advise to read all of the texts in detail and work with the questions. Right, let's go to the next ones. Questions from 6 to 13. Here we have to complete the notes below, choosing one word only. That's easy, just one word from the passage for each answer. So the note is called Comparison of Aluminium Screw Caps and Cork Bottle Stoppers. Okay, so at first we are talking about the advantages of aluminium screw caps. So when you have already read the text, you know that the answer is somewhere here in this paragraph. Right, we see that the first sentence talks about the virtual monopoly of cork as the material for bottle stoppers. But there are some concerns about the effect it may have on the contents of the bottle. So there are maybe some adverse effects that cork stoppers may have on what's inside the bottles, maybe wine or anything else. Probably it's wine. So what is all about exactly? This is caused by a chemical compound called this. Quite a difficult name for a chemical compound, but this compound in the tiniest concentration can spoil the taste of the product contained in the bottle. So we see that aluminium screw caps do not have this chemical compound inside that cork stoppers have, and therefore the aluminium ones cannot spoil the taste of the product contained in the bottle. So here it's quite evident that the aluminium screw caps do not affect the taste of the bottle contents. Right, so it's the taste. Now, what other advantages are there to aluminium screw caps? They are something to produce and something to use. Probably they are cheap to produce and easy to use. That's something that just pops into my mind logically, but let's see what is here. So in the last sentence, it says that these substitutes, meaning aluminium screw caps, are cheaper to manufacture and in case of screw caps are more convenient for the user. So yeah, exactly this, except we use the word convenient instead of easy to use. So cheaper to produce and convenient to use here. Okay, now advantages of cork bottle stoppers. You see there are more advantages to those. So they suit something of quality products. Okay, what do they suit? In our last paragraph, we see that the classic cork stopper does have several advantages. Okay, which ones? Firstly, its traditional image is more in keeping with that of the type of high-quality goods with which it has long been associated. So, it's quite a difficult sentence, but in short, it just says that the cork stoppers suit, that's the synonym of to be in keeping with, they suit the traditional image of these high quality goods. So that's exactly what we can put in here. They suit the image of quality products. What else do? They are made from something material. So secondly, and very importantly, cork is a sustainable product that can be recycled without difficulty. So it's probably made out of sustainable material, right? And can be easily recycled. So we already have answers to two questions here. Made from a sustainable material. And another thing in the number of 11 can be easily recycled. Okay, great. We are left with two. Cork forests aid something and cork forests stop something from happening. Okay, what is that? We see that, moreover, cork forests are a resource which support local biodiversity and prevent desertification in the regions where they are planted. Okay, so they support local biodiversity. Support is a synonym to the word to aid, to help. They help local biodiversity, and we cannot use more words than just one, so we drop local and use just the noun biodiversity here. In the number 12, cork forests aid biodiversity. What do they stop from happening? Now, to stop something from happening is a synonym of the verb to prevent, and the cork forests clearly prevent desertification in the regions where they are planted. Desertification is our answer here. Great, we are done with our text number 1. Now, we move on to the passage number 2. It should be a little bit more difficult. We see that we have to complete sentences below, again choosing just one word. Let's jump to the second passage. Here it is. Collecting as a hobby. Again, I suspect and hope that you have already read this passage. So for us, it will be easier and faster to fill in the answers. Now, number 14. The writer mentions collecting something as an example of collecting in order to make money. Right, it's probably somewhere in the first or in the second paragraph. In fact, the first paragraph is just an introductory one. It doesn't really have any valuable information in it. But the second paragraph says that there are people who collect because they want to make money. This could be called an instrumental reason for collecting. That is, collecting as a means to an end. So what exactly do they collect, right? This sentence doesn't say us anything. But the next sentence says that they will look for, say, antiques that they can buy cheaply and expect to be able to sell at a profit. Right, so antiques is something that they can collect. And this is what we put here. The writer mentions collecting antiques as an example of collecting in order to make money. Now, next one, 15. Collectors may get a feeling of something from buying and selling items. What is this? In the same paragraph, it says that there may be a psychological element too. Buying cheap and selling dear can give the collector a sense of triumph. Great, so a sense is a synonym of the word feeling here, and therefore collectors may get a feeling of triumph. Okay, from buying and selling items. Perfect. Next one. Collectors' clubs provide opportunities to share something, maybe to share expertise or their finds. Let's see what they can share. Many collectors collect to develop their social life, attending meetings of a group of collectors, which is a club, and exchanging, meaning sharing, information on items. So they just easily share information. That's what we have to put in here. Number 16 is information. Perfect. Number 17, collectors clubs offer something with people who have similar interests. So that should be a noun here. What do they offer? That's the same small paragraph over here, and it says in the second sentence that this is a variant on joining a bridge club or a gym, and similarly brings them into contact with like-minded people. So like-minded people is a synonym for people who have similar interests, and those clubs obviously offer the contact with the people who have similar interests. So it's basically the same that is written here, but just in other words. Remember that it's very important to write everything in other words using synonyms. Okay, next one. Collecting sometimes involves a lifelong something for a special item. Again, that's probably a noun here. So we see that in the next paragraph it is going on about another motive for collecting. So here it is just a desire to find something special, so it does not fit here in our parts, but there is nothing saying that this is a lifelong desire, right? But in the next paragraph we see that some may spend their whole lives, which is a paraphrase of the lifelong, in a hunt for something. So we can easily paraphrase this to that some may involve a lifelong hunt for a special item. And that's why hunt is the answer to our sentence number 18. Now, sentence number 19. Searching for something particular may prevent people from feeling their life is completely something. Here it's probably an adjective, not a noun. Let's see what an adjective we can get in this paragraph that can fit this sentence. Next sentence. Psychologically, this can give a purpose to a life that otherwise feels aimless. That's our adjective, aimless. So it clearly fits here. Searching for something particular may prevent people from feeling that their life is completely aimless. Right, now, sentence number 20. Stamp collecting may be something because it provides facts about different countries. Again, probably that's an adjective here. That's actually the next passage, and here in the first sentence it says that if you think about collecting postage stamps, or another potential reason for it, or perhaps as a result of collecting, is its educational value. So educational is a perfect adjective to fit here in this sentence because it provides facts about different countries, which is education in itself. And the meaning of the answer can be derived even logically without going back to the text. And the last sentence, something tends to be mostly a male hobby. Remember that it starts from the first one, so in your answer sheet you should write down this answer capitalized with a capital big letter in the front because it is the first word in this sentence. All of the other words were written starting from a small letter, but this one should be capitalized. So what is just mostly a male hobby? In the next paragraph, we see that in the past and nowadays too, a popular form of collecting, particularly among boys and men, was train spotting. So train spotting is something that men are keen on. Don't forget that we write train spotting starting with a capital letter. Marvelous! We are done with our questions from 14 to 21. Now let's go forward to the questions 22 to 26. They are the last ones for this passage. So that's again true, false, not given. Now we know how to deal with it. The first statement is the number of people buying dolls has grown over the centuries. Let's go forward. We see here in the first sentence that similarly people who collect dolls may go beyond simply enlarging their collection and develop an interest in the way the dolls are made on the materials that they are used. Again, that's more about the educational value, but there is nothing in this sentence about the number of people who collect and buy those dolls. There is something about the material they are made out of, like wax and porcelain. There are other reasons why collectors may do it, but nothing here or here about how many people do it and whether this number grows. So that's easily a not given fact. It is simply not stated in our passage. Right, next one. 16th century European dolls were normally made of wax and porcelain. So it's somewhere here. It says that these have changed over the centuries from the wood that was the standard in the 16th century Europe, through the wax and porcelain of later centuries, to the plastics of today's dolls. So for 16th century it was primarily wood, but for the next centuries it was wax and porcelain. Therefore, it's clearly not the 16th, it will be probably 17th, 18th, and so on, up to the plastics. So this is false. The next sentence is, arranging a stamp collection by the size of the stamps is less common than other methods. Is it? Let's see. In the next paragraph, it says that stamp collectors arrange their stamps in albums quite neatly. They organize their collections according to certain principles, but nothing really about the size of the stamps, right? So it's not that it's false, maybe it's true, but this paragraph does not say us anything about the organizing stamps by their size. So again, that's just not given. Right, what is our next one? Someone who collects unusual objects may want others to think he or she is also unusual. An interesting statement. Let's see if this is true, false, or not given. In the next paragraph, it says that one reason, conscious or not, for what someone chooses to collect is to show the collector's individualism. So yeah, they kind of want to show here, you see that, for instance, maybe conveying their belief that they must be interesting themselves. So they want to showcase that they're interesting people, that they're not usual people, that they are individuals. So people who collect unusual objects indeed try to impress others and show that they are unusual themselves. So this is true, which is quite interesting. I haven't really thought about this in my own life, but apparently it is true. And the next sentence, collecting gives a feeling that other hobbies are unlikely to inspire. In the second sentence, in the last paragraph, it says that more than most other hobbies, collecting can be totally engrossing and can give a strong sense of personal fulfillment. More than most other hobbies. So most other hobbies do not really give this strong sense of personal fulfillment. They're not really engrossing. They're not meaning that they're not interesting or that captivating. Therefore, indeed, unfortunately, other hobbies will be not that likely to inspire, to engage people who already collect and are keen collectors. Amazing! We are done with our text number 2. Let's go right to the reading passage number 3, and the first task here is a list of headings. Now that's the only one that I don't really like personally. I feel like the list of headings is definitely not easy, and here you have to deal with it a bit differently, because it definitely makes sense to read the list of headings first and only then go to the text to understand what each paragraph is about in the text, and then you can go back and forth to the list of headings as many times as you want, but make sure you stay in that time limit of your test and finish everything on time. Now, again, I suppose you already read the text, so we will proceed directly with the list of headings. For the section A is all about that interesting course that is called Arson for Profit, that is taught in one of the universities in the US. And there is one prominent sentence that says that, but what would the founders of these two institutions have thought of a course called Arson for Profit? I kid you not, we have it on the books. So these two sentences show us that this name for the course is very particular, it's very interesting. It may also appear funny or maybe even as a joke, and therefore the author states, I kid you not. So he underscores that this may be perceived as a joke, as a funny name, and that it is actually a serious name for the course. So we do have such a heading, actually. Let's read them all. Courses that require a high level of commitment. There is nothing in this passage about commitment at all. A course title with two meanings. Again, nothing saying that there are two meanings or that the meaning is not clear. The equal importance of two key issues. Nothing about issues here or any problems, except for maybe it's just a joke, except for maybe this name is too funny or too unusual. Another one is applying a theory in an unexpected context. No. The financial benefits of studying, definitely not. Nothing about money here. A surprising course title. Well, this looks like a true heading because it's indeed an unusual and surprising course title. Let's read on. So, different names for different outcomes? No. And the possibility of attracting the wrong kind of student. Nothing here about wrong students or right students. So I'm sure that for the section A, the title number 6 is the correct one. Great. Section B. Here in the section B, we learn that the course is intended for prospective arson investigators. And by this time, if you have not yet Googled what arson is, that's bad, because every time you see a new word, and probably arson is a new word for you, you must go and look it up in the dictionary every single time. Write it down, see if it has any synonyms. So arson is an action of setting something on fire deliberately, on purpose, maybe having bad intentions. So those who commit arson are usually law violators, or they want to do something very bad for others, and that's why they can set something on fire. And arson investigators are those people who try to find and track the person who is committing arson, basically. So naturally, this course is intended for those good people who can learn all of the tricks of the trade for detecting whether a fire was deliberately set, discovering who did it, and establishing a chain of evidence for effective prosecution in a court of law. However, the author also says that maybe this can be a perfect course for prospective arsonists. So there might be people who will use this knowledge to become an arsonist and to set things on fire deliberately. That's definitely not something that the author of the course wants to happen. However, it might happen. So in our list of headings, which heading is a perfect match for this section B? I would say that that's the possibility of attracting the wrong kind of student. So this whole passage is all about the fact that maybe people who will commit arson in their future life will use this course to know more about it and to become more educated and commit crime even more successfully. Now, let's go to the section C. So this section is a bit on the philosophical side because the author talks about the principles of marketing that he decided to teach in one of the courses. But as long as the author is a philosopher, he decided to turn this around a little bit and derive a question to the students: is marketing principled, based on the name of the course, Principles of Marketing. He says that after all, a subject matter can have principles in the sense of being codified, having rules, as with football or chess, without being principled in the sense of being ethical. So many of the students immediately assumed that the answer to my question about marketing principle was obvious. No, just look at the ways in which everything under the sun has been marketed. Therefore, obviously, it need not to be done in a principled, meaning ethical fashion. Right? So they're talking about principles of marketing being principled, not being a field of science that acts according to the rules. Maybe there is a rule book or a book of principles. So basically, there are two meanings to this course name, right? It's not a course name that can be just taken very easily and in an obvious way. This lecturer, as a philosopher, just turned it around and showed students another meaning. And we have a heading that matches this perfectly. That's the second one, a course title with two meanings. Because this paragraph has nothing to do with high level of commitment as in our first heading, or equal importance of two key issues. No issues here, although this might be tempting because we also have two meanings in this section, but meanings are not issues. So this one doesn't really apply. Then applying a theory in an unexpected context? No. Definitely nothing about financial benefits and nothing about different names for different outcomes. So a course title with two meanings really works the best for this section C. Moving on to section D. Here it's such a tiny small section, and the author says that I made the suggestion, which may sound downright crazy in light of the evidence, that perhaps marketing is by definition principled. My inspiration for this judgment is the philosopher Immanuel Kant, who argued that any body of knowledge consists of an end or purpose and a means. So the professor makes a downright crazy suggestion using this theory, the theory of Immanuel Kant. So he applies this theory in a very unexpected way because he says that marketing is by definition principle. Does it remind you something? I hope it does, because in our list of headings, we have a heading that says applying a theory in an unexpected context. And that's exactly what happens here. So the professor applies this theory of Immanuel Kant to the unexpected context of a marketing class. And this gives us the ability to use heading number 4 as the heading for section D. Now, moving on to the section E, they go on talking about applying terms means and end to marketing. I hope you have read this section quite carefully because it is not an easy one and it really requires precision and attention. So the students have signed up for a course in order to learn how to market effectively, right? But to what end? To what purpose? Then the lecturer goes on saying that one is that the answer is obvious. The purpose of marketing is to sell things and to make money. The other attitude is that the purpose of marketing is irrelevant because each person comes to the program and course with his or her own plans, so his or her own individual purpose, and these need not even concern the acquisition of marketing experience as such. So the proposal of this lecturer is to put importance to two different things according to the theory that he uses by Immanuel Kant, both how you do something and why you do something. So that is written in our last sentence. Students need to study both how to achieve X and also what X is, right? So this course has two different key issues, two different purposes, and two different meanings behind that. But because we have already used this heading, a course title with different meanings, we now kind of dig deeper into the course, and that's why the third heading, the equal importance of two key issues that arise while teaching and working on this course, is more relevant. So we used the heading number 3 for our section E. Let's see what headings we are left with. First one, courses that require a high level of commitment, is still on the market for us. Next one is the financial benefits of studying. And the last one is the different names for different outcomes. So we have to choose between those three headings, right? So let's read this very, very carefully. I will just pinpoint to what to pay your utmost attention to. So let's see that the lecturer says that when I ask fire science students to articulate the end or purpose of their field, they eventually generalize to something like the safety and welfare of society, which seems right. But as we have seen, someone could use the very same knowledge of means to achieve a much less noble end, such as personal profit via destructive, dangerous, reckless activity. And he now talks about arsonists, about those people who set things on fire deliberately. But we would not call that firefighting. We have a separate word for it, arson. Right. So there are two different outcomes from different names. There is firefighting, one name, and arson, another name. And both of these names have different outcomes. They talk about people using the same means, but coming to different purposes. One is to fight the fire, which is a noble purpose, and another to set something on fire, which is destructive and dangerous purpose. You can, of course, read on. It will help you to understand the answer better. But these two sentences in the core of this paragraph are the main topic of it. So we can already derive what the last heading will be. Again, it's not about any level of commitment here. Nothing was said about commitment in this section. Nothing was said about the financial benefits at all. But we definitely saw that different names bring us to different outcomes. This is true. So we use the heading number 7 for our last section F. And congrats, we are done with this hard and difficult part, and we move on to easier last questions, although last questions are usually the most difficult ones, but I think that headings are still not very pleasant to deal with. So questions from 33 to 36, we need to complete the summary below using no more than 2 words. Okay, the Arson for Profit course. This is a university course intended for students who are undergraduates and who are studying something. So here we can already suspect that this will be a noun and this will be a name of their program, what they are studying. Let's go back to our first paragraph. And it says that any undergraduates, undergraduates in our task as well, who have met the academic requirements can sign up for the course in our program in fire science. So these guys who are undergraduates and who study fire science can also apply to this course called Arson for Profit. Right, so indeed, here is the name of the program they're studying. The expectation is that they will become something specializing in arson. So who will they become? Again, a noun. So in our section B, it says that naturally the course is intended for prospective arson investigators. So they will become arson investigators. Should we use here both words? I don't think so, because then it gives us a bit more detail as to they will specialize in arson. So probably we can just use the word investigators. They will become investigators specializing in arson. The next sentence, the course will help them to detect cases of arson and find something of criminal intent leading to successful something in the courts. Okay. Find something of criminal intent. What is it? It's actually in this particular sentence as well. So the guys will learn all the tricks of the trade for detecting whether a fire was deliberately set, discovering who did it, establishing a chain of evidence for effective prosecution in a court of law. The court of law, that's easy. We already have it in the courts. So leading to successful what? Effective prosecution is basically the same as successful prosecution in the courts. So we can put prosecution here. It was easier to detect. Now we are left with the criminal intent. What exactly of criminal intent they will find? They will find the evidence of criminal intent, because anything else doesn't really fit here as a noun to this sentence. So evidence is the correct answer. Great, done with this. Now moving to the yes, no, not given. Pay attention, please. It's yes, no, not given, not true and false. You cannot answer here true and false because it will be considered a big mistake. Let's read the statements. Do they agree with the views of the writer? It's not just true or false based on the paragraph. It's whether they agree with the views of the writer. Very important. So the first one, 37, it says, it is difficult to attract students onto courses that do not focus on a career. Is it true? Meaning, does this view agree with what the author says? To be honest, I haven't really seen the author talking about this at all. Have you seen it? I haven't. In all of our sections from A to F, the author was talking about the nature of this course, about its name, about who it is dedicated to, what people can learn in it here. Then they started applying the theory of Immanuel Kant, which kind of was dragging from the section C to the section F. So nothing really was talking about if it's difficult to attract students on this course or not. So the answer here is not given. It was just not stated in our text at all. Okay, the next one is the Arson for Profit course would be useful for people intending to set fire to buildings. Does the author think so? Yeah, actually it is, because we remember that in our section B, the author says that, but wouldn't this also be the perfect course for prospective arsonists to sign up for? Right, so the author says that probably this course could also be useful for people who intend to set something on fire, for arsonists. So yes, this definitely agrees with what the author thinks about this. Next statement, number 39. Fire science courses are too academic to help people to be good at the job of firefighting. Does the author think so? Let's see. It's the same paragraph, and the author says that my point is not to criticize academic programs in fire science. They are highly welcome as part of the increasing professionalization of this and many other occupations. His point is not to criticize the academic programs in fire science. Therefore, in our statement, where we suppose that the author thinks that the courses are too academic, that's definitely not the case, because the author doesn't criticize it. On the contrary, he thinks that this is a healthy trend that will continue. So this statement does not agree with the views of the author. And for the last statement, the writer's fire science students provided a detailed definition of the purpose of their studies. This was in our last paragraph in the section F. He asked the fire science students to articulate the purpose of their field, and the students eventually generalized everything to something like the safety and welfare of society. So the students, instead of giving very detailed description, just generalized their answer, and therefore it's clearly not what is written here. It's the opposite. The writer's fire science students didn't provide a detailed definition, and therefore the answer to this statement is a no. Wonderful! We did it, guys. We are finished with our academic module of reading. Learn more synonyms. Remember, everything is paraphrased in questions and in answers. Learn more about grammar so that you're not lost in difficult sentences. Well, guys, this is it. Thank you so much for being here with me today and taking the test. Don't forget to get your PDFs of this lesson with questions and answers in the description box down below. I will be very happy if you decide to leave a like for me or even subscribe. And as always, I will be delighted to see you again here. Ciao!